Okay, so maybe on that and on the Indigenous rights then, and taking it a little bit broader back to the consultation process, Jodie was wondering, during the consultations, how were Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and people with disabilities and with needs, language needs, including deaf people, given the opportunity to participate in the consultation?
Well, that's quite a handful.
It is.
In terms of Indigenous communities, I think we did pretty well in getting to very remote parts of Australia. And of course, there was no substitute for having an Indigenous member on the committee. And so we were able to have very detailed community consultations in places like Yarrabah, Palm Island, Thursday Island in Queensland. We were able to have detailed consultations in places as diverse as Yirrkala, Wadare, Alice Springs and Santa Teresa. And in remote Western Australia, we were there in Kalgoorlie at the time of the Ward inquest and able to have time with the family of Mr Ward and others who attended the Kalgoorlie round table. So I think in terms of the community round tables, we did pretty well in getting to the remoter Indigenous communities. I myself would have liked to have seen more engagement with national Indigenous organisations. But for whatever reason, that wasn't much forthcoming. But we did, for example, have a splendid weekend with the New South Wales Judiciary and all the key Indigenous justice groups in New South Wales discussing questions to do with Indigenous people in the courts. So there were those sorts of possibilities. In terms of the deaf, except for at some of the community roundtables, we did have the facilities for the deaf, but definitely at the 3 days of public hearings in Parliament House, we ensured that there were services available for the deaf. In terms of the disabled, I don't know that, I mean, there was nothing much that we did in terms of particular roundtables with disabled groups, although of course we did have people like Rosemary Kays from the New South Wales Disability Service appearing at the public hearings.
Great, thank you. I guess we could go to something you were described as a fence sitter and you referred to today. And Alice asks, Frank, how did listening to people face to face affect or change any of your original attitudes? And then gives you a slight compliment, which I should also read out. And hopefully now, how can you use your great communication skills to ensure government action on the consultations now that it has concluded?
Well, I suppose the cop-out is I'm leaving the country now for 5 weeks, but I think that's a very good thing in that I think having been involved in a report such as this, it's appropriate that I not be hanging around evangelising for it or defending it. I think it's appropriate that people on all sides have a chance to read the report, pick it apart, put it back together, even improve on it. And I think in that's a robust part of the political process. In terms of my own involvement on these issues, well, of course, I suppose one reason for me that it's been a privilege to be engaged in this is I've had 30 years or so involved in human rights type issues, not usually to do with the architecture of human rights acts or whatever, and I usually leave that to academics like George Williams and others. But as a community person, it was a great privilege for me to be involved in this, and I'm sure in the future that when asked to speak, I will happily accept.